William Keller hated omegas, but he was forced to marry me, a low-tier omega. Despite his resistance, he was decent enough to me. Then I overheard him mocking me to a friend. Omegas are so much trouble, always going into heat. The next day, I handed him the signed divorce papers. But then I got a message from the hospital, telling me I was pregnant. I'm a low-tier omega. My parents rejected me from a young age, so my grandfather raised me. Before he passed away, he entrusted me to the Keller family. Grandpa Keller was an old friend of my grandpa's, and without a second thought, he had his grandson marry me. When William heard the news, he nearly flipped the table. He pointed at me and furiously asked his grandpa, "There are plenty of ways to take care of someone. Why does it have to be marriage?" Grandpa Keller calmly took a sip of his tea. I checked. "You two are highly compatible. You've been refusing to date anyone. I think Owen is a great match." "Grandpa, you know I hate omegas," William said, taking a deep breath. "Besides, high compatibility doesn't guarantee a good relationship." Grandpa Keller's eyes narrowed. "You forgot you met Owen once when you were little and said you were going to marry him when you grew up. Now that your grandpa is making your wish come true, you've got a problem with it." Hearing this, William was so stunned he didn't know what to say. "That was just kid stuff. I forgot all about it." Grandpa Keller ignored him, his mind set on us getting married. Seeing this, William turned to me. "What about you? You want to get married?" I lowered my head and didn't answer. It didn't matter who I married. If not him, it would be some other alpha. I had no choice in my own marriage. Though my parents couldn't stand me, they were always scheming. They wanted to marry me off for an insane amount of money to pay for my alpha younger brother's wedding. That was why, before he died, my grandpa had entrusted me to the Kellers. His protests useless, William resigned himself to the car ride to City Hall with me. He handed me the prenup, signaling for me to read it. Without even looking, I flipped to the last page, picked up the pen, and prepared to sign. "You're not going to read it?" William glanced at me. "Not worried I'll screw you over?" "You wouldn't." I wrote my name stroke by stroke. William let out a short, sharp laugh. "Right. I'm the one getting screwed over here. If you hadn't cast some spell on my grandpa, I wouldn't be in this mess." I opened my mouth, but I couldn't bring myself to say something as cruel as he had. William was an S-rank alpha. If it weren't for my grandpa, he would never have married a low-tier omega like me. I managed to dry, I didn't, and turned my head away, ignoring him. After a quick ceremony, William tossed the marriage certificate to me. "I've got something to do, so I won't see you out." He strode toward the parking lot. After a few steps, he turned back. We agreed. We live our own lives. I won't bother you and you don't bother me. And 1 year from today, we get a divorce. I know. Following my memory, I found the apartment William and I were supposed to share. Beep, beep, beep. Incorrect passcode. Confused, I stared at the keypad and entered the code again. It showed an error once more. Grandpa Keller had given me the passcode. I'd been here twice before we got married, so I couldn't have forgotten it. If it was wrong, it could only mean William had secretly changed it. I blinked slowly, and on a whim, I typed in a new string of numbers. Beep. Unlocked. The house was dark. William wasn't back yet. It seemed like he wouldn't be coming back tonight. With him gone, I could finally relax. After dinner, I was curled up on the sofa with a fruit salad, happily watching a show. Suddenly, there was a noise at the entryway. I turned my head and my eyes met William's. William froze, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He asked, his tone a little unnatural, "How did you get in?" I used the passcode. William had secretly changed it to the date 1 year from today, as if to remind me, or maybe to remind himself. This marriage was never something either of us wanted. 1 year from today, we would be divorced. I looked away and said softly, "Don't worry. When the time comes, I won't cling to you." William gave me a long, hard look before finally tossing out, "See that you don't," and hurrying upstairs. After half a month of living peacefully with William, I got a message from Grandpa Keller. He wanted William and me to come over for dinner. I replied with a quick okay and stood by the road to hail a cab. Before I could even confirm my destination, a car pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing William's sharp, handsome profile. "Get in." He stared straight ahead, not even glancing at me. If I had been the only one on the street, I wouldn't have been sure he was talking to me. Seeing his reluctance, I refused without a second thought. "No thanks. I can get a cab." William clicked his tongue in annoyance, his voice sharp. "You were the one begging to marry me. What's with the act now?" What was he talking about? I wasn't the one who dragged him to get married. Even with my calm temper, his words made my blood boil. I turned on my heel and walked away without looking back. I'd just find another spot to get a cab. The car door slammed shut, followed by William's angry voice. "Owen, are you trying to get me yelled at by Grandpa?" To be honest, I kind of wanted to see that happen. He was just so infuriating. William quickly caught up and grabbed my arm. I stumbled, a sharp pain shooting through my arm where he held me. Couldn't help but hiss. "I barely touched you." He quickly let go, his eyes fixed on the red mark on my arm. He muttered, "Omegas are so fragile. I didn't even use any force and you're saying it hurts. So much trouble." I rubbed my arm and glared at him, finally snapping back. Yeah, I'm fragile and a ton of trouble. It's not like I asked you to pick me up." William fell silent, his breathing uneven for a few moments. He awkwardly reached for me again. This time, his touch was gentle and so was his voice. "I'm sorry, what I said was out of line. Come on, let's not keep Grandpa waiting." When we got to Grandpa Keller's house, he cheerfully pulled me into a game of chess, completely ignoring a pouting William on the side. While we played, I chatted with the old man. Grandpa Keller glanced at William sitting next to us, then gave me a watch as a wedding gift. I couldn't refuse, so I held out my hand and let him put it on for me. Grandpa Keller smiled and said, "Owen, my boy, if he ever gives you trouble, you just tell me. Grandpa's on your side." "I will, Grandpa." I nodded with a grin. William, sitting nearby, frowned uncomfortably. I remembered this place. When I was little, my grandpa brought me to the Keller house once. Back then, William wasn't scowling like he was now. He was a total sweetheart. He was always following me around, shamelessly complimenting me and asking me to be his future husband. But who would have thought a childhood joke would actually come true? I really did marry William. As the sky began to darken, William finally found an excuse, interrupting us with a frown. "Weren't we supposed to eat? The food's getting cold. Why are we still playing chess?" At the dinner table, William was forced to sit across from me. His long legs had nowhere to go, and they kept brushing against my shins. Remembering how he'd hurt my arm, a little bit of a vengeful streak took over, and I deliberately rubbed his leg with the tip of my foot a few times just to mess with him. He froze, his eyes widening as his chopsticks clattered onto the table. "Owen, you..." Grandpa Keller, completely unaware of what was happening under the table, scolded, "William, what are you yelling at Owen for?" "Grandpa, he was clearly..." A faint blush crept up his ears as William stammered, unable to explain. I just smiled innocently, pretending I hadn't done a thing. The frustrated look on William's face didn't fade until bedtime. Unlike our apartment, we couldn't sleep in separate rooms here. William had to share a bed with me, and he wrapped himself up tightly in the blankets, looking like some damsel in distress afraid I was going to pounce. A faint scent of mint filled the room. I didn't think much of it, assuming it was just an air freshener, until the night grew deeper. A subtle heat began to stir deep inside me, making me toss and turn, unable to sleep. A hand suddenly pressed down on my shoulder, carrying that minty scent. William's cool voice washed over me. "If you can't sleep, get out." His arm was cool to the touch, and I instinctively hugged it, rubbing my cheek against it. Muttering drowsily, I said, "Is the AC off? Or is it broken?" "William, I'm so hot." William's whole body went rigid. He pushed me away with a bit of force. "Owen, do you realize you're going into heat?" As he said it, I smelled my own pheromones. The scent of grapefruit had slipped out at some point, thick and overwhelming. Realizing something was wrong, I reached back to touch my neck. My glands weren't swollen, not like a real heat. I'd forgotten. Low-tier omegas are easily affected by alpha pheromones. Just a tiny amount could send me into a pseudo heat. I bit my finger in distress, trying to use the pain to push back the rising heat. What do? You can't use suppressants for a pseudo heat. A film of moisture blurred my vision, and I couldn't make out William's expression. All I could feel was that unmistakable, cool scent of mint. A large hand reached out and covered my eyes. William's voice was hoarse. "Don't look at me like that." A long time passed, but the heat didn't fade. In fact, it grew stronger. Desperate, I grabbed William's wrist and asked tentatively, "Could you help me?" William glanced at me, not answering directly. "Have you forgotten the agreement?" The prenup stated that we would not interfere in each other's lives, and that included heats and ruts. No, I haven't. But he was the one who had triggered this pseudo heat. What was the big deal with him helping me out? The mint scent in the air thinned, signaling his refusal. William wouldn't help me. I dejectedly pulled my hand back, hugged the blankets, and silently turned my back to him. In that instant, the heat in my body seemed to be replaced by a chill seeping from my heart. It gave me a moment to breathe. Trouble. I heard the rustle of fabric behind me. I was pulled into a warm embrace. Then, without warning, a sharp pain shot through the back of my neck. After the temporary mark, I didn't see William for several days. The official story was that he was on a business trip. In reality, I think he was avoiding me. That day, after he bit my scent gland, I was still reveling in the relief as the heat subsided. Without a moment's hesitation, William had left me and locked himself in the bathroom. I planned to wait for him to come out before I fell asleep. But I couldn't stay awake, and he never came out. The constant sound of the running shower became a surprisingly effective white noise machine. When I woke up, Grandpa Keller told me that William had left on a last-minute business trip. A newly marked Omega will unconsciously become dependent on their alpha. But my alpha had left before I even knew it. I understood in that moment. The temporary mark and the embrace meant nothing. William still didn't accept me as his Omega. I pushed down my disappointment and said I understood. Smelling the mixed pheromones on me, Grandpa Keller just smiled. He showed me photos of William from when he was a kid and told me all sorts of stories about him. He also explained the reason William hated Omegas. William was handsome and an S-rank alpha. As the heir to the Keller fortune, many people tried to get close to him. They would exploit the fact that alpha and omega pheromones affect each other, trying to use omegas to trap him. There had been numerous incidents where omegas in heat were planted in his hotel rooms during business trips. Not to mention the countless other times he was harassed with pheromones elsewhere. Whether it was intentional or not, things like that had happened far too often. It made William despise pheromones and omegas more and more. Grandpa Keller looked at me and asked softly, "So, for my sake, can you give him a little more time?" For Grandpa Keller's sake, I took the initiative and texted William, "When are you coming back?" I waited for a long time, but William never replied. The mark on my neck had long since faded, the mint scent stripped from my body. For the past 2 days, my glands had been swelling intermittently. It was a sign my heat was coming. Since William wasn't back, I decided to go to the old house where my grandpa and I used to live. Though it was run down, it was the safe house where I'd spent years weathering my heats. As I turned into the alley, my phone dinged. It was William. He replied concisely, "Today." Not a word more. Maybe it was my pheromones acting up, but I felt a wave of disappointment and couldn't help but refresh the chat a few more times. Suddenly, I heard the sound of frantic footsteps behind me, accompanied by a pungent pheromone scent. My glands throbbed, and a painful ache shot through my neck. A strong force yanked me backward. Before I could even scream for help, a rough hand clamped over my mouth. My phone was knocked to the ground with a muffled thud, making no splash at all. Someone pinned me down, took a deep whiff of my neck, and let out a lewd laugh. In heat and still wandering around outside. "Little Omega, were you waiting for me?" His hand moved to my waist, and a wave of nausea washed over me. Fighting through the intense discomfort, I kicked hard between his legs. The man cried out in pain. Forgetting my phone, I forced myself up and ran. I didn't get far before the enraged man grabbed me and slammed me against the wall. Damn it, you dare kick me? You go into heat just from smelling my pheromones. So why are you acting so high and mighty? A sharp pain shot through the back of my head, and my vision went black as I struggled with all my might. I felt a pang of regret. Why did I have to come back here for my heat today? The next second, the weight on me suddenly vanished. It was replaced by the sounds of punches and kicks, and the man's pained cries. I stumbled to my feet, gasping for air as my vision slowly cleared. William was here. The tension in my body finally released, and my legs went so weak I couldn't stand. I leaned against the wall, panting. William rushed over, his face etched with worry, and caught me. The fresh scent of mint drove away the foul stench, bringing with it a profound sense of security. William called the police and had his assistant stay behind to wait for them to take the man away. Then he took me to the hospital. I was still shaken as he held me in his arms. I clung to him tightly, not wanting to let go. William's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. Owen, let go. Let's get you checked out first. I shook my head, wanting to wrap myself around him like an octopus. I was terrified that if he left my side, something like what just happened would happen again. This is a hospital. Nothing else is going to happen, William said patiently, releasing his pheromones to soothe me. Let the doctor look at your injuries, and as soon as you're bandaged up, we'll go home. Okay? I slowly loosened my grip and looked at the gentle expression on William's face. I had to wonder if it was real. When had William ever been this gentle with me? His cool mint pheromones were so reassuring. I finally allowed myself to relax. William didn't lie. After the checkup and getting my wounds bandaged, he took me home. Why did you go there today? Remembering how much he hated omegas, I didn't want him to know my heat was approaching. I told a small lie. I left something there and went back to get it. William didn't question it. Next time you want to go back, just tell me. I'll take you. I looked at him, surprised. William didn't say anything, his attention focused on the TV. After a while, he suddenly added, "It's what Grandpa wanted. Don't overthink it." Oh, of course. It wasn't like he'd suddenly had a change of heart. Normally, William wouldn't stay in the living room for long. He was either in his study, his bedroom, or out of the house. But today, for some reason, he sat on the sofa with me, watching a variety show. I hugged a pillow, feeling increasingly restless. My body temperature was rising, and my glands were burning. The scent of grapefruit started to leak out again. William shifted away from me, his brow furrowed. "Owen, are you in heat again?" I bit my lip, lowered my head, and said softly, "My heat cycle is here. Last time was a pseudo heat." I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to get closer to the alpha. "William, you should go. I don't want to affect you." Without a moment's hesitation, William got up and left. Watching his back, I almost couldn't stop myself from calling out for him to stay. Even just a hint of his pheromones would be enough. But his words from before, trouble, echoed in my mind, and I couldn't bring myself to ask him to stay. My hands shaking, I injected the suppressant and slowly went back to my room. Curling up in the pile of clothes I'd arranged, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened it, I saw William. "Your heat," he said, a faint blush on his face as he asked awkwardly, "Do you need me to do anything?" Huh? What did he mean by that? Did he think my pheromones were too strong and affecting him, so he came to intervene? Didn't we agree to not interfere with each other? I knew my place. I didn't dare to hope for more. William's face suddenly darkened. He nodded. Right. No interference. He turned and went back to his room, the slam of his door deafening. I crawled back into my nest of clothes, waiting for the suppressant to work. But the heat only intensified, making me feel like I'd been thrown into a pot of boiling water, completely drenched. Desire drove me to shakily get up. The moment I stepped out the door, I collided with William. I was about to speak when I heard him let out a soft sigh. I looked up to see a knowing expression on his face. William shook his head with a look of resignation. I knew it. Omegas have zero self-control. He carried me back to the room. I opened my mouth, trying to explain that I just wanted his pheromones. Nothing more. But William didn't give me a chance to speak, leaning down to seal my lips with his. In the thick of my feverish desire, the cool mint of his scent was a perfect comfort. William became much closer to me. He no longer avoided me after a temporary mark like before. He started spending more and more time at home with me. Hugging gradually became a daily habit. His previous dislike seemed like a distant memory. He seemed to have accepted me as his omega. We spent a month in what felt like a honeymoon phase. After I finished my semi-annual omega checkup at the hospital, William happened to finish work and came to pick me up. As soon as I got in the car, I naturally leaned over to kiss him. It was probably the effect of being marked, but lately, I'd become addicted to his scent. Missing even one kiss made my heart ache. I gave him a light, fleeting peck on the lips. William turned his face away, his expression neutral. He was always like this, disliking public displays of affection. William explained, "We're gonna see a baby soon. It's not good to have strong pheromones." He was taking me to his friend's baby's first birthday party. The baby sat in his stroller, kicking his little feet, as William and I watched him chew on his hand. "Isn't my son adorable?" Nathan asked with a smile, rescuing the baby's slobbery hand from his mouth. Couldn't help but reach out. "Yes, so cute. His cheeks are so soft." The next second, the baby was placed in William's arms. "You're a natural," Nathan said with a grin. "You two should have one soon. Give my son a playmate." William didn't answer. He just looked down, gently squeezing the baby's tiny hand, lost in thought. But Nathan's casual remark made me start to fantasize. What would a child of mine and William's be like? Would they be this soft and adorable? Would they look more like William or more like me? But William probably wouldn't agree. After all, we had agreed to divorce in a year. An alpha and omega who were going to divorce couldn't have a child. Seeing that William didn't respond, the conversation shifted to something else. A moment later, William suddenly spoke. "Okay." I looked at him in disbelief. William's expression was normal, a slight smile on his lips. "Okay, what?" The clock was ticking toward 9. The baby was yawning and had been carried off to bed by his omega father. I was getting sleepy too, so I went upstairs to find William so we could go home. The study door was ajar, and light spilled out from the crack, along with the sound of their voices. "So how is it? Having an omega isn't so bad, right?" "It's not great," William's voice was flat. "There's so much trouble always going into heat. And when they do, they just whine for pheromones like they can't live without them." "Hey, don't say that," Nathan interrupted before William could continue. "Owen has a lower pheromone level, so he's more susceptible to yours. Besides, it helps you two get closer. Isn't that a good thing?" William didn't reply. He seemed to sense something and suddenly turned his head toward the door. I quickly ducked to the side and tiptoed downstairs. The living room was empty. My throat tightened, and my eyes began to sting. So William still hated me for being an omega. The gentleness after my heat was the illusion. The cold, constant disgust was the reality. It was the pheromones and the mark that had created this fantasy, making me believe that William was starting to like me too. A moment later, William appeared downstairs. "Owen, let's go." I fought to keep my expression neutral and let out a long breath. "Okay." As I lay in bed, the memories of the past 2 months with William flashed through my mind like a movie. There was William's blatant impatience with me at the beginning, and then his later warmth and patience. Before I had experienced his tenderness, I could endure his annoyance. But after discovering his gentle side, I couldn't bear his open disgust. I sniffled, a belated wave of grievance washing over me. It wasn't like I wanted this marriage in the first place. In the end, he only hated me, no one else. We could have just lived our separate lives according to the agreement. He was the one who crossed that line first, who helped me through my heat. And now it was somehow all my fault. Suddenly, I didn't want to continue like this. I couldn't stand his hatred for me, for omegas. Since I couldn't sleep anyway, I got out of bed. Before we married, William had his lawyer draft the divorce papers at the same time as the prenup. The printer spat out the agreement page by page. I skimmed it, crossed out a few sections, and signed my name without hesitation. Around noon, William happened to come home. As usual, he gave me a hug when he walked in. "What's wrong?" William cupped my face. "You don't look happy." Tears almost burst out. I feigned composure and shook my head. During lunch, watching William act so calm and natural, the words I'd overheard yesterday replayed in my mind. I couldn't help but ask, "Before we got married, you said you hated omegas. What about now? Do you still hate them?" William glanced at me. Why the sudden question? "It's nothing." I quickly finished my food and went back to the room. William followed close behind, his brow furrowed. "Owen, what is wrong with you?" Perfect. Now I didn't have to go find him. I handed him the signed divorce papers and said softly, "William, let's get a divorce." "What do you mean? Why do you want a divorce?" William didn't take the papers, letting them flutter to the floor. My eyelashes trembled as I stared at the black and white text on the floor, my vision blurring. "Isn't this what you wanted?" I thought it through. "I don't want to force you to continue this with me." William took a deep breath. "I never said I hated you, and I never said I wanted a divorce right now." I shot back, "We're gonna get divorced eventually anyway, aren't we?" William didn't answer, but the scent of his pheromones suddenly became overwhelming. After a long moment, he finally said, "Grandpa won't agree. If I'm the one who tells him, he will." William mumbled a quiet mm. The mint scent, usually so fresh, was now so heavy it was hard to breathe. Suddenly, the ding of my phone shattered the silence. I opened it. It was my test results from the hospital. I knew I should be dealing with the situation with William, but for some reason, I clicked on it. My heart began to race inexplicably. But when I saw the results, my heart skipped a beat. "I'm pregnant? How is that possible?" We were careful during my heat. Seeing the color drain from my face, William pulled me into his arms. "What's wrong?" His eyesight was good, and he easily saw the contents on my phone. William let out a soft laugh, the oppressive air around him lifting. "Still want that divorce?" I numbly lowered my phone, blinking, at a complete loss. This baby was so unexpected. "Yes." His response was his back turning away and the thunderous slam of the door. Ignoring William, I made an appointment at the hospital. The moment I stepped out the door, William was already waiting for me. He looked terrible, with dark, exhausted circles under his eyes. "Owen, let's talk." I dodged the hand he reached out. "I don't have time." "Where are you going?" "I'll drive you. An omega's strength is no match for an alpha's." William forced me into the car. In the end, the baby in my belly was his too. He had a right to be there. After the checkup, the doctor told me that because my own pheromone level was low, I needed a temporary mark from an alpha every day. I glanced at William, who I'd banished to wait outside the door, and asked, "Can't I just take synthetic pheromones?" We were getting divorced. How could I ask my soon-to-be ex-husband for pheromones every day? The doctor shook her head. "Synthetics are no match for the real thing. Even the pheromones from a simple hug are better than synthetics." So I still needed William. On the way back, I had no idea how to solve this problem and closed my eyes in frustration. The car stopped at our front door, and William, who had been silent the whole ride, finally spoke. "Can we please not get a divorce yet, Owen?" I shook my head. "A divorce won't stop me from keeping the baby, and I never said you couldn't see the baby in the future." He played the Grandpa Keller card. "Grandpa's getting older. I'm afraid he'll get too angry, and it'll be bad for his health." He knew Grandpa Keller would be angry. Then why didn't he take this marriage seriously from the start? Seeing my silence, William proposed a compromise. "This house is in your name. I'll move out tomorrow, and you can keep living here. Is that okay?" I reluctantly agreed. William slowly moved out. He didn't take much, but the house felt strangely empty. I had to find things to do to keep myself busy, to stop my mind from wandering. It wasn't until dusk that I realized my stomach was empty and I was starving. Just as I was about to order some takeout, William, out of the blue, called me. "Have you eaten?" "Not yet." Over the phone, I heard William let out a sigh of relief. His voice was tentative. I forgot we don't live together anymore. I made too much food." Can I bring it over and we can eat together? After he spoke, he held his breath, waiting for my answer. I hesitated before saying, okay. Before he moved out, I was almost always the one asking him if he'd eaten. Now, he was the one asking me. Well, we used to eat together anyway. One more meal wouldn't hurt. Less than a minute later, William appeared. Felt like he had been waiting right outside my door for me to say yes. I gave him a strange look. William calmly set the containers of food he'd brought on the dining table. I thought he would leave after dinner. But instead, William sat down on the sofa with me, under the guise of wanting to finish the show we had been watching together. I didn't believe him. He always fell asleep halfway through the show. Can't you just watch it at your place? I said, not bothering to be polite. No, William said, his eyes on the TV as he fed me a piece of fruit. I don't like watching alone. Fine. With him sitting beside me, even without him deliberately releasing pheromones, I could absorb a little bit. As sleepiness crept up on me, I started trying to kick him out again. This time, William didn't make any more excuses and reluctantly put on his shoes. Just as he was about to leave, I touched my stomach, and after a moment of hesitation, I called out to him, William, have you read the Omega Pregnancy Handbook? I have. I bit my lip and continued. Then do you remember what it said? The next second, I was pulled into a mint-scented embrace. He gently kneaded my scent gland a few times, a tingling sensation making my legs go weak. This might hurt a little. Just bear with it. Then his canines pierced my skin. Cool mint fragrance rushed into my glands, coursing through my entire body. I clenched my jaw, trying not to let a single moan escape. After what felt like an eternity, I shifted my numb legs. Okay, that's enough. I need to sleep. William obediently let me go. But my legs were so numb I couldn't stand steady, and he caught me again. William licked his lips, his expression serious as he asked, Can you what? I looked up at him, confused. When I met his intense gaze, my heart fluttered. You're imagining things, of course not, MMPH. A kiss landed on my lips unexpectedly, cutting off the rest of my sentence. Doesn't he hate omegas? What's he kissing me for all of a sudden? For the next 2 weeks, William used the same clumsy excuse. He'd say he made too much food and bring it over to eat together. For the sake of me and the baby needing his pheromones, I didn't refuse him. Until today's prenatal checkup. The doctor told me that temporary marking could now be changed to once a week instead of daily. I could finally refuse William. I've already eaten. You can eat by yourself. If there are leftovers, save them for your next meal. After a moment of silence, William asked, Was yesterday's food not good? I made something different today. No, it was fine. I moved to close the door. William quickly blocked it with his hand, his gaze shifting to my neck. You haven't been marked yet. At the mention of that, I couldn't help but laugh. The doctor said I don't need it every day anymore. William looked stunned as I shut the door in his face. The next day, right on schedule, William called me again. Grandpa said he misses you and wants us to come over. When we got to Grandpa Keller's, he was all smiles, his face full of pleasant surprise. Why didn't you two tell me you were coming? I would have had Mrs. Lynn prepare your favorite dishes. I turned and glared at William. So he had used his grandpa as an excuse to trick me. I forced a smile and said, Oh, we just suddenly missed you, Grandpa. So we came over. Our visit stretched from day into night. Looking at the dark sky outside, William took the initiative. It looks like it's going to rain, Grandpa. We'll just sleep here tonight. Grandpa Keller was delighted. I, however, was not. Staying here meant I had to share a room with William. Listening to the wind and rain outside, which had granted William his wish, I deliberately sat on the sofa, procrastinating. William asked uncertainly, Are you angry? I huffed. Not at all. I wasn't angry. I just didn't understand. William had been acting so strangely lately. Can we go rest in the room first? William asked softly, before Grandpa notices. Using Grandpa Keller as an excuse again, I shot him a look and stomped back to the room. When it was time to sleep, I wrapped myself in the blanket and turned my back to William, making it clear I didn't want to talk. The rustling of clothes sounded behind me. William moved closer. Do you need pheromones? I kept my eyes closed and ignored him. You probably do, William said, talking to himself. The handbook says you need a lot of alpha pheromones during pregnancy. Before I could answer, the scent of mint washed over me, blanketing me completely. Breathing in the rich pheromones, my body and mind couldn't help but relax. Thinking about his recent behavior, so different from before, I let out a self-deprecating laugh. Late at night, the breathing behind me grew steady and even. I curled up, and once he was asleep, I whispered, William, the way you've been acting lately, I almost thought you were starting to like me. After we got back from that visit, I didn't hear from William for 2 straight days. An indescribable emotion settled over me, making me feel restless and irritable. Pregnancy requires alpha pheromones. I found myself drawn to his room. William hadn't stayed here in so long that the pheromones in the room were barely detectable. Unable to smell his scent, I ended up just punching his pillow over and over. Damn him. He was the one who said he'd give me pheromones. What was this disappearing act now? After thinking it over, I decided to just call him. I had my excuse ready. The baby wanted its alpha's pheromones. The phone rang for a long time without an answer. My patience was wearing thin when he finally picked up. On the line, William's voice sounded strange, his breathing ragged. What was he doing? Am I interrupting you? I almost bit my tongue. Don't get the wrong idea, William denied, his breathing still heavy. I'm working out. And here I was, thinking I was about to catch him cheating so I could finally get him to sign the divorce papers. William, you haven't given me any calming pheromones for 2 days. My stomach feels a little upset. William didn't make me wait long. He must have rushed over because his body temperature was a little high and his pheromones were intense. It worked wonders to calm me down. Unconsciously, that mint scent grew stronger and stronger until it was almost overwhelming. Pinched my nose. Can you tone it down? It's too strong. William kept his head down, silent. I found it strange, and clutching the blanket tighter, I asked, William, what's wrong with you? William slowly lifted his head. The corners of his eyes flushed red. His damp eyes held an inexplicable sense of grievance. Owen, I feel awful. His expression and tone were full of a vulnerability and petulance I'd never seen before. You! I was stunned. Muttering under my breath, have you lost your mind? Did I ask for too many calming pheromones? Did he release so much that his brain short-circuited? William walked toward me, asking plaintively, I feel awful. Why aren't you coming to hug me? He collapsed into my arms, nuzzling his head against me. Need pheromones, give me pheromones. His moist lips brushed against my neck, sending a shiver of pleasure through me. I trembled, the sensation of his nuzzling making it impossible to push him away. Even if I'd never seen it before, I could guess that William's rut had started. Deprived of pheromones, William's eyes turned red with frustration, tears welling up. Why won't you give me pheromones? A low-tier omega doesn't have many pheromones to begin with, especially now that I was pregnant and needed to supply them to the baby every day. How could I possibly have enough left to soothe a full-grown alpha in his rut? I tried my best to release them, but the scent of grapefruit was easily overwhelmed by the mint, never reaching the concentration he needed. William cried, Owen, just hold me. I did as he asked, cooing softly, There, let's just take a little shot and you'll feel all better. Okay? No. Hugs weren't enough. William wanted kisses and even more. Like you, I like you so much, I want you. He pressed me down and kissed me desperately, his whole body hot and flush against mine, making me go limp. I fumbled to open the suppressant injector. Without looking, I quickly jabbed it into his body. The person who had been crying and fussing suddenly went quiet. William stared at me blankly, touched the back of his neck, and choked out, That hurt a little. You'll feel better soon. I patted his head and, with great effort, managed to tuck him into bed. The suppressant slowly took effect, and William gradually calmed down. Looking at his peaceful, sleeping face, I was furious. So who's the one who gets all weepy and whines for pheromones during their cycle? Sniffing the strong mint scent on myself, I looked at him again. Finally, I couldn't resist kicking the sleeping alpha. After his rut, William was back to normal. It was as if that night had just been a dream. The days passed peacefully. My flat stomach slowly began to show a soft curve. In the evening, I was leisurely watering the flowers with a small watering can, waiting for William to come over after work. A phone call shattered the quiet. "Owen, where the hell have you been fooling around? You haven't been home in days." My mood instantly plummeted. I asked coldly, "What do you want?" Even through the phone, I could picture Linda jumping up and down in anger. "I'm your mother. Do I need a reason to call you?" They had abandoned me long ago, as soon as my childhood designation test results came back. For all these years, every time she contacted me, it was either for money or because she'd taken money from some alpha to let him forcefully mark me. Linda's tone suddenly did a 180. "Son, you're not getting any younger. Mom found a good match for you. This again." I cleared my throat and cut her off. "I'm pregnant." Linda's voice stopped abruptly. I deliberately continued, "The baby's father and I broke up. I don't have money for an abortion. Mom, can you give me some money?" "Don't you dare." Linda's tone was disgusted, her voice sharp and piercing. "You go out and fool around and get yourself knocked up, and now you're asking me for money. I don't have a son like you." As if she was afraid I'd really ask her for money, Linda hung up, still cursing. I pretended to be anxious and called her back a few more times until she got annoyed and blocked me. The surroundings fell silent again. My emotions slowly caught up, and a wave of sadness washed over me. A gentle mint scent slowly drifted over, carrying a strong sense of comfort. I sniffled and asked in a low voice, "You heard all that?" William grunted in acknowledgement, his tone unreadable. He easily lifted me into his arms and carried me inside. I explained quietly, "I was just saying things to make her angry. I didn't mean it." William didn't ask any more questions, just silently stayed by my side. When it was time for him to leave, William helped me get settled for the night and was about to go. Breathing in his mint scent, I suddenly grabbed the corner of his shirt. "William, maybe you could stay tonight. I'm turning off the lights. Okay?" "Okay." I shifted over, making plenty of room for William. It had been a long time since we'd slept in the same bed. I thought I would feel awkward, but surprisingly, it felt completely natural. William's embrace was warm. I couldn't help but lean in, curling up in his arms. Without warning, my eyes stung with tears. I rubbed my nose and whispered, "William, I don't have a family anymore. I used to hold out a sliver of hope for my parents. I thought that since they gave birth to me, even if my designation didn't meet their expectations, they couldn't possibly hate me that much. But in reality, from the time I was 5, the only family I had was my grandpa. Only grandpa didn't mind that I was a low-tier omega, he was the one who took me in. You have me and the baby and my grandpa." William gently stroked the back of my head, his voice soft. "We're all your family." I clutched his shirt, listening to his words, but my mind flashed back to what I'd heard at Nathan's house. "But don't you hate me?" William's whole body tensed. I don't hate you." I choked back a sob and argued, "But I heard you." "Heard what?" "What you said at your friend's house that day." William's expression faltered, his lips turning down. "You heard all of it?" I nodded. William held me carefully, explaining softly, "I'm sorry. I was wrong to treat you so badly before. I just couldn't accept it right away, so I said those things. That night, when I was holding you, I thought about it carefully. Owen, I like you. I never hated you." I let out a soft "oh." William immediately held me tighter, as if he wanted to meld me into his body. "Owen, can you give me a chance to love you again?" I bit my lip, forcing myself to stay calm as I nodded. Okay." William chuckled and leaned in to kiss me, his voice low and full of affection. "So, honey, we're not getting a divorce, are we?" Hearing the sudden pet name, my cheeks burned hot, and my ears turned red. I gave him a little push, shyly dodging the kisses he kept planting on me. "Don't call me that." "Then what should I call you?" William asked, feigning innocence. "Sweetheart?" He already called me that. Why did he have to ask? Sweetheart, honey,